having a party?
There's a Nightcrawler who's created a new designer drug. The only problem is it's not a drug. It's vampire blood. He's breeding an undead army. The only thing that stands between him and the annihilation of the entire human race would be us, Frog Brothers.
We haven't been the Frog Brothers for a long time.
I can't do it without you.
They can do what they want, whenever they want to do it.
What do you guys have to drink in this jalopy?
If I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna need weapons. Lots of really expensive, custom-made weapons. Let's rock and roll.
Just try and relax. This will all be over soon.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Pod and the Pendulum Podcast, your horror movie podcast, covering every single horror movie franchise, one movie, one episode at a time. I'm your host, Mike Snoonian, and the crew is back tonight. 3 in a row? Is it 3 in a row? 4 in a row. I can count. This is fantastic. But yeah, we're all here. So joined once again by my illustrious co-host, Jerry Smith. Jerry, how are we doing?
I think that's the first time I've ever been called illustrious, and I'm feeling it. I'm doing great.
Doing fantastic.
I'm thirsty for some DJX.
Are you?
And some vampire blood, and yeah.
Are you putting down the graphic novels right now so you can...
I don't read comic books.
Full participation. Graphic novels.
Oh Lord, yes, I'm excited.
Who else do we have on here? Up next, we have Veronica. Veronica, how are we?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you doing? How you doing, Mike?
Doing fantastic. Thank you for asking right now.
Great.
And from Dread Central and Ghastly Grinning, we have Brian Kuiper. Brian, what's up?
I am doing fantastic. It's so good to be here.
You
and
rushed
not
home.
Be talking about the tribe. Huh?
You rushed home, braved traffic, drove in and out, weaved in and out like a crazy person to get home in time to do this.
I sure did, yeah.
It was almost as if you were playing Frogger to talk about the Frog Brothers.
Oh,
Jesus.
Do you like that? Do you like that? You can cut
geez.
it.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show for the evening.
Good night, everybody.
Oh, Lord. You know,
All right.
at least Brian didn't jump from a plane, going to meet Johnny Trash for an interview.
That's right.
Johnny Trash.
All right.
I think we're just a little more excited to talk about this one than the tribe.
I was going to say, I actually like this movie.
Me too.
I enjoyed it. So we're here to conclude our talk on the Lost Boys franchise tonight with 2010's straight to video Lost Boys: The Thirst. How can you not be excited for that?
I think after the tribe, I'm excited for anything.
I mean, honest to God, like anything would have to be a step up, right? I mean, like The Thirst made Mandy look like fantastic stuff. Like I would rather watch.
I think the thing with that is that Mandy is fantastic.
Mandy is fantastic.
Yeah.
Like...
It's 3 against 1, Mike.
Mandy is like, no, Mandy is a crime against humanity. It's really
100%.
I really hope they come out with I really hope they
Oh.
come out with a Mandy 2, so we have to force Mike to watch it.
Same. Oh yes, when Nick Cage makes himself a Valerian steel a battle sword and snorts coke off it, like that's movie history. That goes down with the horse head in the bed. That goes down with, play it against, like that is history in the making. I know, Mike. You just got to rewatch it. I feel your enthusiasm right now, but
so. I'm going to ask a question. Brian, what is your favorite dessert?
My favorite dessert? Brownies, I guess.
Brownies. Okay. So imagine you are offered like the world's greatest brownie, right? Imagine you're offered the world's greatest brownie, okay?
Okay.
But
sure.
in order to do that, what is your least favorite vegetable?
I don't know, kale.
Kale, okay. In order to like get to your favorite dessert, this amazing brownie, this life-changing brownie, right? You have to eat like a crate full of kale, basically. I mean, like every time you think you're done with the kale, like the waiter comes by and he just throws another bucket of it on there, right? And it's just,
You
I mean,
are-
like you're gonna be shitting green for a week when you're done this thing, right? I mean, it is awful, okay?
Okay,
But you
Mike,
finish.
Mike,
You finally get done. You go through all this kale. You're finally done, right? And they're like, "All right, now you're gonna get this life-changing brownie." And they bring out this massive plate, and on that massive plate, there is like a thumb-sized piece of brownie, like one bite of brownie. That is Mandy in a nutshell. Okay. In order to
Oh
get to all the craziness of Mandy, you have
no.
to sit through like so much boring shit, so much
Oh
fullness.
no.
Just the most like, it's like the perfect cure for insomnia. So like the reward does not meet, the reward doesn't meet the chore that it takes to get through that first hour and 20 minutes of that movie.
okay,
Man, that is
that analogy was tough.
Amazing.
Okay, well, Mike, you do realize who you're talking to.
I know.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
this is the guy who, okay, I give myself one cheat meal a week.
Mhm.
This is the guy, kale, I still have it. That's part of
But
the deal.
Does anybody
you know?
eat kale like kale? Everybody.
yes. Make kale
No.
chips. Put them in the oven. Put butter on them. I love kale chips.
So you debate all the
Vegetables
health.
are delicious with butter.
So after that Mandy
Just like-
rant, that's it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
basically,
You-
take some kale, wrap it in a stick of butter, and mow down, and you're like, but it's still kale. It's super healthy.
Wow,
Come on, people.
wow.
Sheep
All
will wake up is basically. I feel like Christian Slater in Pump Up the Volume right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
Only one speaking the truth to the masses right now.
Mm.
As long as you have that concrete blonde show up in
Oh,
that song, that's good.
Fantastic.
It's amazing. I love
All
Pump
right.
Up the Volume. And
All
it's
right.
great.
Nobody wants to hear my voice anymore right now, so I am going to step back. And, we usually don't do synopsises here in the show because most of the movies we covered are pretty well known. They're pretty beloved overall. And if you haven't seen them, there's a pretty good chance at some point you mean to at this point. But I think with something like Lost Boys, The Tribe, it's not something that shoots to the Thirst, I should say. Lost Boys, The Thirst. It doesn't shoot to the top of anyone's list. So, Veronica, can you do us the kindness of giving us a synopsis of what The Thirst is all about?
Yeah. I guess I can probably sum this up in The Thirst is, if you remember what you loved about The Lost Boys and what you hated about The Tribe, you kind of mash them together and it becomes The Thirst. The Lost Boys, The Thirst is Edgar, the original Frog Brother, and his brother Alan, and I mean, I guess I can give away spoilers because no one's actually going to watch this movie. Alan is a half vampire, and Edgar gets recruited by this. Listen, I'm not good at telling summaries, but I'm just going
Okay.
to tell the Veronica style summary.
There's
where
absolutely no pressure on you at all.
Edgar gets
Nothing is riding
recruited
on this.
by this Stephanie Meyer woman who comes in and writes these Twilight books and says, "You have to save my brother." And he's like, "No," but then he says, "Yes." And they go and save him. And that's how it works. And there's some twists and turns all over the place. And I have to tell you, I don't think I loved this movie as much as you guys
Mhm.
liked this movie. But I do appreciate the callbacks to the original in this movie, whereas The Tribe was a disgrace. This was an homage. So
Okay. Yeah, and I think there's a lot going on overall. That was, thank you very much. I think like you get to see oh God, now I can't remember. It's not Edgar, it's the other frog brother.
Alan.
Turned into a half vampire after he rescues a congressman from a vampiric senator, which in a really fun opening scene. And you get like the world's biggest rave because 2010, how can you not have a rave?
Yeah,
Only 10 years behind the time. So
Yeah, so that's what confused me about this movie was I wasn't sure if it was supposed to take place in 2010. It had a lot of references that showed it was filmed in 2010, but like the phone usage and the talk of the raves and it just it felt very 1994 heavy
Mhm.
to me.
Yeah, I think so too. I think after The Tribe, I think that they were like the people making it were probably like, you know what, fuck it, let's not try to make sense because The Tribe just screwed any chances we have with this franchise. Let's at least make a movie that's fun again, that feels. It's. I mean, it will never be the first film. You know, going into it, you have to expect that. But at the same time, I loved like those callbacks you were talking about. I mean, the comic book that Sam read is in it. You know, the Superman comic that Sam first talked about the Frog Brothers with is actually, you know, a little like subplot in it. Like there's the weird thing about The Thirst is there's actually some really endearing moments in it.
Yeah.
And I think that it's summed up perfectly from the words of Corey Feldman himself. This is, and I've been sitting on this one all day because it made me laugh so hard. This is what Corey Feldman had to say about The Thirst. And straight from his mouth. Wait until you see LB3. Then you will know the depths that my art has mirrored my personal strife and how they resurface as one. I embraced this character with body and soul and brought a human side to the frog character that no one could ever see coming. I'm proud of my work, and I believe you will be too. Way to go.
All right, Corey.
And you know,
That's so tender, but at the same time, I can see that he really meant it in that movie. He really brought something to that movie that I think that he's really proud of.
Well, I mean, there's course correction, definitely. You know, because the Edgar that we saw in The Tribe, it doesn't even feel like the same character as the original. Whereas this one, it does seem like the Edgar Frog that we met in the first film,
Right.
just a little more weathered and beaten down. I mean, there's little throwaway lines that like when he speaks about how Michael and Star won't talk to him anymore, or that he had to kill Sam, which is such a huge moment, you know?
Right.
Like there are quite a few scenes in this movie that like I think were really well done. I think sometimes they're kind of outweighed by like the really ridiculous shit, like vampires jumping out of a plane to meet like the Lost Boys equivalent to Perez Hilton, you know? we get my favorite line in the whole movie, you know, with the hipster guy, like, I don't read comic books, I read graphic novels. Like, there's so much to love about this movie, but at the same time, it's kind of like that kid. Every parent has a kid that they love them, but you kind of want to like smother them to death every once in a while.
Right, the bless your heart kid, right? Like,
you know what? I love you, but and you try so hard, but I'll never love you as much as your sister. Everyone has that kid.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie overall. Like, I really had a lot of fun with it. And it's a cheesy direct-to-video. Like, the CGI in this is, not good. It's not. But it's one of those things I think you can look past. But I think the biggest thing that jumped out to me is rather than be a movie where you had a script and said, we're going to, force a Lost Boys story into it with some of the characters that you know, but it's not really a Lost Boys movie. This was written to be a Lost Boys movie. And it puts the focus on, Edgar Frog. It has callbacks to the original. It feels like there's a lot more effort. Like, everybody seems to be trying a little bit harder in this movie, and I think that goes a long way. What jumped out to me is like the first scene in California. When you're on the beachside town, the first thing you do is you see people surfing. It's a little insert shot for like 5 seconds of just people surfing, and I'm like, there is already more surfing in this movie than there was in the movie about goddamn surfing vampires. Already people are trying harder.
I think that's, and this is kind of speaking on how this is both a Lost Boys film and, like Veronica said, a sequel to The Tribe, unfortunately. Evan Charnoff wrote the majority of this movie. And I think that what he wrote is the stuff that we really enjoyed about it. But the other person who took a stab at the script initially was the writer of The Tribe.
Oh.
So what you get is you get a cross between a movie that is trying so hard to be a character-driven sequel to The Lost Boys, but you also get the shit like The Rave, the jumping out of a plane shit and stuff like that feels like it was written by the guy who wrote The Tribe. And I feel like if they had just used Evan Charnov, I feel like the movie would have been even closer to what everybody had wanted, which is really weird because The Tribe was very successful on home video and everyone hated The Thirst, which is so odd to me because it's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't get it. I really don't get how people would hate this movie more than The Tribe. It doesn't make any sense. Unless people really love incest, which...
I mean, there's some of that here too, though, man. Like, I mean, it's a theme.
Wait, where's the incest in this movie?
I mean, okay, well, it's not technically incest, but whatever her name is was
I love
looking
that.
for
That's
her.
the story of my sex tape, by the way. It's not technically incest.
It was Gwen, right?
Yeah, Gwen. They were trying to save her quote unquote brother, but it wasn't her brother. It was the.
No, it was a ruse. It was all a ruse.
Sure, it was a ruse, but they still took on the fact that it was a brother and a sister again.
Well, it's kind of like the opposite effect of Old Boy. The whole movie you're like, oh, and then the end you're like, shit. Whereas this movie, most of the movie you're like, shit, and then at the end you're like, oh, they weren't brother and sister. Okay, I don't feel so bad anymore.
Honestly, Corey Feldman's reaction is so, that he says these things to make himself laugh, but when he just goes in his gruff, like, ew, it was good. It was funny. I laughed, and I laughed more than I thought I would at a lot of his delivery in this.
I think my favorite line from him was, "Your bow dice rippers."
He said bow dice.
Bow dice. Yeah.
I wrote that down too.
Yeah, I wrote that one down, and there's nothing sexy about being a vampire,
Also, when he picks up a promise ring and automatically associates it with virgins, and he says that virgins are vampire filet mignon.
I laughed. I mean, that to me was funny.
The whole concept was funny.
I was having a conversation yesterday with someone about Corey Feldman, actually. and it ended up being like a long conversation. I think it was William Butler from Texas Chainsaw 3. He and I were talking about Corey Feldman just in general, and we both said that like he's made so many weird decisions in the last decade or so, but wouldn't it be great to see someone give him a really good shot again, something something along the same lines of The Wrestler, or a movie you wouldn't expect from Corey Feldman. Give him a good, because I feel he's so encompassed with that Ascension Millennium bullshit and the Corey's Angels and all that stuff that I think a lot of times we forget that. I mean,
how good he was.
God damn,
he was good. I mean, they've done it with Ethan Embry and Steven Dorff. People are giving in indie movies. I would love to see, I don't know, Cheap Thrills with Corey Feldman. How fun would that be?
No, totally. I would love to see that.
Yeah, watching Ethan Embry have that ascent with Cheap Thrills and then The Devil's Candy, you're I learned, two things. A, Ethan Embry is incredible still, and B, I would absolutely not mess with Ethan Embry under any circumstances. But you go back, you watch, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, Gremlins, Goonies, Stand By Me, the original Lost Boys movie, and you have a kid, a young actor that is really gonna break out, and then he just does a lot of teeny bopper stuff, and then other things happen that just kind of push him down this path. And I think you're right. I think there's no reason he couldn't be a great character, get a character actor turn in a Tarantino movie, and then people remember oh yeah, this guy still has it.
No, totally. I was never growing, and I'll probably get a lot of shit from our listeners for saying this, but growing up, I was never massive on the Goonies. That wasn't my story. I was more of a Monster Squad kid. But there's that one scene in the Goonies where Corey Feldman kind of gives that monologue about his dream, and I think that, dude, and when I was having that conversation recently, the other person was like, "Well, I don't know if he still has it." I'm sorry, but dude, like, I don't think you lose that shit. You know what I mean?
I don't think that
like,
goes away.
There is such talent in that monologue in the Goonies that, fuck, man, I would kill to see him cast in another good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it sucks because everything that he gets associated with gets like turned into like a punchline. You know, and it's too bad. It's really too bad. I mean, it is like Goonies 2 was announced, but wasn't that announced in like 2004 at this point? And that's just never going to happen.
It's kind of like the next 28 Days Later movie. Like, okay, get it. You know, it's going to happen this year. It's not going to.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to do like 28 years later, actually 28 years later. So, which would be incredible if they had that dedication, like if they did that, but
the boyhood dedication in the zombie movie.
Oh my goodness, you don't have to do that. So
I also think that like bringing back Jameson Newlander for this movie as Alan Frog was such a good touch.
Yes.
Those guys have like such great chemistry. And I know that he went on to be the creator of Wiki Soap, which if you guys don't know what it is, it's basically a soap opera completely generated by its users. It's pretty fucking lame, but I just thought I'd throw that out there.
I don't understand it. I don't understand this concept.
So it's like a fanfic where they have...
They create their own soap opera.
Okay.
With like a whole universe. Yes, Alan Frog created that.
Okay.
And that's what he was doing with this time. So I'm really happy that he came back, because seeing those characters together, I mean, I had such a bad taste from The Tribe, but watching The Thirst, it's not a spectacular movie, but it's fun. Yeah. And there's that chemistry between those two guys that really just shines in this one.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's that first, and Jerry, you had said, like, guys, trust me, the first 5 minutes of this movie is far better than anything, you'll see in the Tribe. And you were right, like that opening scene where they're fighting the vampire senator is so much fun. It's just goofy and silly and a lot of fun. And I'm like, all right, I think I'm on board for this movie at this point. Like, I think I can do this. And there was some like really bad stuff in it. Like, there's the reality. There's like the Bear Grylls or paranormal hunter type character.
Oh, Lars von Trier. No, Lars von
Trier in this movie would be amazing.
Wouldn't that be great? If we could get
Werner Herzog in Star Wars.
And all the music is sung by Bjork. Like,
apparently, because like we are late to the game on Mandalorian, but now we're watching it every night at dinner. It's like my wife is really into it, and she's not usually a Star Wars. Like our pillow talk.
Well, it's Baby Yoda.
Yeah, our post. I mean, she makes me call her Baby Yoda.
Cute. All right.
That's great. But anyway, I read this thing today where like Werner Herzog like really fell in love with Baby Yoda.
Yes.
Like he's like trying to direct it on set, not realizing that it's a puppet.
He was like, he cried when he first saw it.
Yes.
He was moved to tears.
Yeah. And they were going to like CGI Baby Yoda, and he called them cowards, which is amazing. He's like, keep it to puppet, you cowards. So they did, because when Herzog tells you to do something, you do it.
I get the biggest kick out of this man. I watch that clip of him getting shot at least once a month.
Wait a minute, what?
I'm sorry, you don't know about him giving an interview. In the middle of an interview, he shot with like a pellet gun. He says,
I thought this was Mandalorian. I'm like,
no, he says like, it appears that I've been shot, and then keeps going on with the interview. No, this is a life spoiler right now, not a Mandalorian spoiler.
Oh, do we lose
No, he's
Brian?
wonderful.
Brian,
No,
like,
I'm still here. I mean, okay, Werner Herzog is kind of a hero of mine.
Yes.
I can't say too much about him because I may or may not be writing a piece about him right now.
Then give some deets.
Okay, so I have a piece that's I'm going to be talking a little bit about his Nosferatu. A piece that's coming up, and it's coming up next month. So, but yeah, oh my gosh, I had so many wonderful quotes from him, but his quotes are so long and so like bizarre and amazing. Oh, Yeah, I adore Werner Herzog.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't seen The Mandalorian yet because I don't have Disney Plus yet because it's like I don't have kids, but I have 3. So I don't know. But yeah, we're planning on getting it, so I'm looking forward to watching The Mandalorian finally, just so I can hear Werner Herzog speak, because
it's really just worth it for that.
Yeah, I imagine it has to be.
And he had a great cameo in this movie as well, I believe. I believe he was the young raver. I believe Werner Herzog was at the rave with some glow sticks getting down.
I saw this
skinny puppy.
I don't know if this is off topic, but that's how we roll here on the Pod and the Pendulum. It's Werner Herzog as Laffy Taffy joke writer.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Oh my gosh. Google that, folks, because it's hilarious. But you gotta listen. You gotta imagine it in his voice. It's like, why does the cow moo? To break the horrible silence that is existence. It's beautiful. It is, fantastic.
I think that
I don't do a very good Werner Herzog impression.
Oh, it was good enough for me, Brian.
It was really good.
I think one of the things about the Thirst that I find incredibly hard to believe, it's not the vampires jumping out of a plane. It's not.
Could you give us some context? I think we've said this a few times now, and I think people are like, what? Can you give us some context?
Where, vampires are basically flying in a plane, and they need to go meet this Perez Hilton tabloid reporter who is covering the rave, and his whole existence in the movie is just to cover a rave so they can kill him off. Why didn't they just pay a publicist? It's fucking $45. They'll block it to email people. But anyways, they jump out of this plane just to meet this reporter, and then they just kill him. It's pointless. But more than that, the thing I cannot, I'm all about suspending disbelief. The thing I cannot buy is that Corey Feldman visits the grave of Sam, and he leaves Batman number 14. That is bullshit. As a comic lover, I think it's more traumatic than watching The Tribe again. Tell me where that cemetery is.
I have a scene that I really did like in this movie a lot. It's probably my favorite scene in the whole movie. The one that stood out to me the most was the homage to Unforgiven.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Where he goes out there and he's trying to shoot something and he keeps missing it. So he goes and he gets the big water pistol thing and just blows it away. Just like Clint Eastwood, he hasn't picked up his gun in 20 years and he keeps missing the bottles, so he pulls out the shotgun and shoots it. So yeah, homage to Unforgiven in The Thirst.
Oh, man. This whole movie's gold. Even my issues with it.
It's a fun bad movie. It's a good bad movie.
I came into this not loving it, but you guys are just selling me on it. I'm finding it more and more endearing the more y'all talk about it. So
what else are you gonna hear Corey Feldman say? It's time for Mr. Frog's Wild Ride.
Mr. Frogs, and all of the groans, even when Lars von whatever picks him up for a hug, you just hear that guttural.
Yeah. Well, my favorite line from him was, "It turns holy water into the holy slaughter."
Slaughter.
There's so many. I'm actually scanning the book.
Why didn't we have? I know they had the squirt guns in the first movie, but super soakers, holy water super soakers. Why was not this a thing earlier?
Well, but you have these grenade launching holy water bombs in this movie, which he's a terrible shot. You're really looking forward to seeing these things, kick some ass, and he just keeps missing. It's a very Matrix, again, 10 years behind the time, but a very Matrix slow motion scene, and he just misses and gets stabbed at that point.
Well,
also, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. This is nothing important.
Oh, neither is mine. I'll just talk then. But but the very end, right, where it feels both lazy and brilliant, where he blesses the water that's already on the vampire.
Mm-hmm.
I had to rewind it because I was like, wait, what happened? So my husband and I rewound it, and as we watched it, my husband is narrating. He's like, he just blessed the water that was already on him, and my jaw just starts dropping.
See, what's really sad is when that happened, I was like, oh yeah, in the tribe, he mentions he became an ordained minister, and that's why he can do that. And then I'm like, holy crap, you just referenced the tribe in order to.
Well, there are a couple references to that movie. I mean, they name drop the city, I think once or twice in this one. That.
By and large, it ignores it. By and large, it ignores.
Totally. I mean, that was an active thing. Like Corey Feldman, like he went on record, like when they were about to make it, saying that he really felt he let the whole team let the fans down with the tribe, mostly because they did. But I mean, this was definitely course correction, and I think all those really good one-liners from the first film, I mean, I love that they're in this one in spades. Like the tribe, it just felt so different, and we get the Frog Brothers back this time, and they're the same Frog Brothers that are in over their head, but they're so arrogant that they don't realize it. Like you have Alan and Edgar basically like, kissing their own asses, like, we're awesome monster bashers. It's like that's some bullshit that they would have said in the first movie. Mm-hmm. And like there's such a charm to it. And I think that's what I love about the movie. Like there's such a charm to this movie that like I kind of hesitate to call it so bad it's good. I just think like kind of like Joyride 3, it's just a lot of fun.
Okay.
I've never seen a Joyride movie.
Oh, dude.
Whoa!
I haven't either.
Yeah.
Whoa!
It's funny because the second and the third Joyride are like straight to video, like splatter movies. And I remember I was working for Fangoria at the time, and I went to help with the screening of Joyride 3. It was like the premiere in LA. And so I drove like 2 hours to help Rebecca McKendry with the screening. We set up, we handed out like gore zones and Fangorias to everyone, and nobody from the fucking movie showed up. Nobody from the movie showed up. I think there was maybe 12 people in the whole theater. Like it was so bad that like even like Becca McKendry left before the movie started. So I was just sitting in this couch in front of the movie watching Joyride 3 basically by myself. And it ended up being one of my favorite movies just because how ridiculous it is. I mean, it begins with with the truck driver who kills people basically tying these this meth head couple up to the front of his rig with chains, and they have to fight over who gets the bag of meth without being pulled under the truck.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm just saying, Joyride 3 and Lost Boys of Thirst, double feature.
That would be something. Good does not spring to mind. Wouldn't it be good?
No Mandy.
Oh,
Right.
We can all be thankful for that.
Like
I don't get the appeal of Mandy. I know I'm in the minority here. I know that I'm not going to turn this into a Mandy bashing show. I refuse to do it. I know I'm in the minority, and I'm tilting at windmills with my hatred of this movie. It comes from a bad place.
We should be the ones in the minority because it's a ridiculous movie. It shouldn't be loved, but I
just feel like Nicolas Cage does the same thing over and over, and he did the same thing with Mom and Dad earlier in the year, and Mom and Dad is so much better. It's so much. I enjoy that movie so much more.
Mom and Dad is so fun. Where he's singing, what does he even sing as he's bashing up that pool table? The farmer in the dell. Oh, the hokey pokey. Oh my god, yeah. He's so fun. He's so ridiculous.
And who hasn't wanted to murder children?
Just wait for Color Out of Space. Oh my god, that movie is a trip. So good, so good.
Looking forward to it. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I don't know, I mean, we're kind of all over the map tonight, and I feel like we're 34 minutes in to the show, and I'm like, how much have we really talked about this movie? It's one of those things where it's there, it's present. But I guess like if you were trying to sell somebody, I guess I'm gonna have to edit this part out. I have no idea where I'm going this right now. I am just like filling space with words
Are
right
you talking
now.
about what would be said to try to sell this movie?
Yeah, if you were, you know what? I don't even know. I think
I could take a stab at that, because if I'm good at anything, it's selling movies as something better than what they actually are.
I mean, I'm going to go watch Joyride 3 right now. So
Yeah, me too.
Should. No, but I remember a while back, a friend of mine was talking about a movie, Gladiator. And then they were like, wait, that's not a Russell Crowe movie. I go, no, not that one. It's a different one. James Marshall from Twin Peaks. It's about a kind of underprivileged kid, rising above adversity and stuff. And then someone was like, what the fuck? Like, it is not that complex. It's a movie about boxing. But no, when it comes to The Thirst, let me take a stab at it. It's a movie about growing old and trying. See, I failed already. I can't do it. It's a movie about killing vampires and going to rave. PJX, Johnny Trash. Names make me feel like it was written by someone who was like the PA on Stigmata. Like, what the fuck? Like, who comes up with this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
It really feels like to me, every time something happens, okay, so when they were not to beat a dead horse, but when they were jumping from that aeroplane and and Cry Little Sister starts playing,
Covered by Aiden once again, by the way. Covered by Aiden, not the original.
I turned to my husband and I'm like, this is the epitome of Gen X right now. Like, this is what happens. Like, when man. I know, no, I am too, but but I just felt it so deeply. Like, you have that song playing, you have like these vampires jumping, and it's just like 1986 is with us again, you guys. And it just let go. And I
feel like the only song that's missing from this movie is Got You Where I Want You by The Flies. Like, should have been at some point. You hear that little fucking guitar line that everyone tried to play when they first pick up guitar. It's like, guys, it takes 2 seconds to play that shit. But like, Flagpole Sitta should have been in this fucking movie. Like,
that's a good song, man. I will not have you besmirch the good name of Harvey Danger on the show.
Flies, thank you. But the part where the Hawaiian guy starts rapping in the middle of it. Oh my god.
Mm-hmm. But Flagpole Sittas, it's a banger still to this day. Come on.
Oh,
can I talk a little bit about
yes, of course you can.
About the outfit choices, right? So you might want to rescind that, yes, but I couldn't nail down, again, the 2010 look wasn't coming through in the outfit choices, whereas The Lost Boys was so very 80s. Mm-hmm. And then in this one, he's putting on his little Rambo hat or whatever you call it. It's a bandana, it's not a hat. But but then you also get like in the plane, right, with like all those DJ people, vampires. The woman is dressed like a slutty Amelia Earhart, and I don't understand.
So you mean Amelia Earhart then?
Right, baby. Yeah, no, I don't understand a lot of the I guess they're trying to just make vampires like punk, like they were back in the 80s, but I didn't get that vibe from this movie. And they also didn't modernize it either. So I was left feeling confused.
Well, I just think like this movie is stuck in that kind of like edge, the fashion choices of this movie are kind of stuck in that edgelord,
Well, yeah, because even that girl at the end,
hardcore.
the werewolf who is dressed, I don't remember her name either. I literally just watched this movie 1 hour ago, but I don't know her name. But she's the thin girl
I think it's
who
Zoe is the
helps.
character.
Zoe. It's Zoe. And she's dressed like I don't know, like a dress-up doll. Like she's wearing this little tiny little puffy skirt, and then she's also a werewolf. And it's interesting costuming, is all I'm saying.
Well, she's kind of the manic pixie dream girl of this movie. Like she
Sure.
has short hair. She can, kind of fight. Like is like the cool girl who works in a comic book store and really knows her stuff. And
Not graphic novel store.
Yes,
Of
not the
course,
graphic
yes.
novel store. I think she's like, why don't you go to Barnes and Noble? And because
Right.
as we all know, like independent comic stores are like rolling in money and can send customers away. Don't sell graphic novels. Like no, no indie comic store in 2010 would have been like, graphic novels, what are those, stupid hipster. It's like, no, it's like, yes, see that giant wall behind you, like all those displays, that's where they are. We'll take your money, please.
15 copies of Watchmen.
And all the Walking Deads, yeah, they're all there.
No, I think it's funny that in this movie, I mean, at least we didn't get Angus Sutherland.
Oh, right.
But we did.
That is a plus.
We did get Porteous Xanadu Steenkamp playing Johnny Trash.
Sorry, can you repeat that name?
Porteous Xanadu Steenkamp as Johnny Trash.
Perfect, thank you. The whole phrase is good.
Yeah, this movie. No, but
he has
also, I mean, Corey Haim passed on being in this movie because with
by
the hope.
Dying?
No. Passed on this movie. He died after the movie.
Well, at the end, it's dedicated to him.
No, but
Sorry.
pre-production, there was this movie. He passed on that because they were setting it up for a fourth movie, and that was before he wanted to come back in the fourth one. He wanted to set it up. And he ended up dying before it came out.
The balls on Corey Haim, man.
To think he'd be alive by a fourth one.
I'm
Is that
just
what
thinking,
you're saying? Like,
he's like had so much going on at that point that he's like, you know what?
It's like, did I watch your meltdown about the tribe just to see pass on the thirst?
Oh my god! I mean, just oh, I'm losing it. I'm absolutely all right. I gotta pull myself in here. But
Oh,
like the
guys.
stones on him to be like, yeah, I'm gonna pass up this paycheck, but
Okay.
also like I am gonna bank, like I am gonna roll the dice on this direct-to-video movie, springboarding into a fourth movie, which is going to be my vehicle for a big comeback. That is some poor decision making.
oh,
Who knows? If Haim would have been in the movie, maybe it would have been, Corey Haim that said that, he is really marrying himself with this work of art that he did, like Feldman did.
possible.
Oh man, I mean, like I really thought he was dead by the time. Well, I guess he did die in post-production. I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
So he died in
March.
March of 2010, and the movie came out in October of 2010.
All right. You don't think that he died thinking he'd come back as a vampire, and then like he was going full method and wanted to be
Oh my god. Oh,
Possibly.
It's broken.
I'm going to hell.
We'll say hi to
terrible
Corey down
person.
there.
I'm
But
a terrible person.
Oh man.
Sorry. Well, I just really sunk our show to new lows with that one.
No, I think we did that a while back. I think
yeah, don't worry about it. You're like, hey, Veronica, you want to be on this show? And I'm like, all right. And then now
Mhm.
nobody listens anymore. I'm so sorry about that.
Wow.
I do think that the character of DJ X. No, I have nothing. I just want to say that again.
Oh man. See, we're sitting here making jokes.
DJ had a stupid name like that, kind of like they still do. I've never met a single DJ that had a really cool name other than, Elijah Wood's MacBook,
Mhm.
which is, I think, the best DJ I've ever seen. Like, that's my favorite thing about going Fantastic Fest. It's like, you're really drunk and you're like, well, what am I going to look forward to today? Elijah Wood showing up with his MacBook, like that's the highlight. But DJ X, yeah, rest in peace for that guy too.
Oh wow!
Oh, no.
No, I meant the character. I don't know if I don't know if Seb Castang died.
Oh man! So one of the plot points of this movie, I think one of the things it hinges on is the idea of like the alpha vamp. It does go back to the first movie's idea that if you kill the lead vampire, all the kind of vampire halflings go turn back into human, and it adds a little bit to the movie overall because you have Alan Frog, who's a half vampire in this movie, and it's shown that like whatever happened years ago, so he's gone however many years as a half vampire at this point. And the idea is if we kill DJ X, or what is it, Johnny Trash, if we kill Johnny Trash, then
kill somebody,
if some vampire dies, like Alan's gonna go back to be human again. And it's a neat little twist when that doesn't happen, and you have like, oh man, I don't even remember the kid's name. Nick? I don't know. Who cares? The kind
matter.
the cute little kind of like youngish vampire or youngish dude. Spoiler alert: he's actually the alpha vampire. So I kind of like that move. Then you have the big showdown and whatnot, and it's kind of fun. It's a little bit different, and
I like how skeptical Alan is about the whole like alpha vampire thing too. If I remember correctly, I mean, doesn't he like call it like a pyramid scheme at this point?
Yes, he calls it a pyramid scheme. Yeah.
That's the thing about this movie. Like, it's silly as fuck, and it's dumb at so many points. But like, I think there's a lot of like heart to it, if that makes sense and doesn't sound stupid. I think the characters are very well written, as opposed to the tribe. Like there's silliness, but at the same time, I think there's also really good character arcs in this movie for the Frog Brothers. I mean, even Edgar, like Corey Feldman really does go for it. There is a good character arc about him kind of finally coming to terms with having to kill his best friend that, I mean, he kind of swore to protect in the first movie. He's been alienated by Michael, by Starr, and all these people. He kind of lost his brother. This whole movie's about Edgar kind of coming to terms with that. And I think it's really cool.
Yeah. And I like that all those characters are actually acknowledged in this movie. Even though Michael and Starr aren't in the movie, I like that the first Lost Boy movie is actually acknowledged as opposed to like completely ignored in the tribe.
It kind of leaves it open. If they ever doing that in the movie, it leaves it open to where if they ever had other sequels, that we know that those characters still exist and are a thing,
Yeah.
I mean, I doubt that Jason Patric's going to come back for, Lost Boys 24, but.
Well, you never know, man. You never know at this point.
Maybe we'll get Angus Sutherland back.
God, please, no. Let's not do that.
Mike's like,
oh, man.
Edit the shit out of this episode.
I don't know how we're gonna stitch together like an hour of this show to be.
Good luck, sir.
Yeah, this almost feels like a mini episode at this point. So,
how much more is there really to say about it? I mean, it's a fun movie, but I mean, that's about all it is.
So after the tribe kind of broke all of your hearts as Lost Boys fans, what did you guys think of The Thirst? Like, as it was coming out in 2010, like, was there even a big to-do about it? Were people excited? Was there a lot of...
I can honestly say I never heard of this movie until I Googled Lost Boys Blu-ray on Amazon and said, there's a 3-pack. There must be a third movie.
I was super into the idea of another one just because I hated the tribe with a passion and I wanted to maybe have a little bit of faith in it. I remember around that time Blockbuster was doing that thing for a certain fee. I think it was like $14 or $19. You could get like unlimited rentals. You would take one, go back whenever you get another one. And that's the only reason that I watched The Thirst. The tribe had sucked so bad that I was like, you know what, free rental, might as well try it. And I was so impressed with how much of a step up it was. It was almost a step up 3D for me, which is a great movie. But just kidding. But no, like I really enjoyed it, and I really think, I mean, I've been using course correction so much in this fucking episode, but to use it again, I feel like they really did that. It really shows that they took what the fans of the first film had to say about the second one and really tried to improve on it. And I think that, unfortunately, a lot of people felt burned by the second movie, that to where when it came time to watch the third, you know, they had checked out. They didn't want to do it. And I think that it isn't strange to me that the Tribe made more money, because what did the Tribe do? It just gave people a sequel to The Lost Boys. A lot of people bought that blindly without watching the movie. So there's no chance in hell that they were going to be burned again, so they didn't give the Thirst a shot, which they should have, because it's really fun.
I mean, that is the thing I think people sometimes forget about when a movie, like when a sequel to a long-running franchise doesn't do quite as well. It's, you know, for example, I think Friday the 13th Part 6, I think it either made less or barely more money than Friday the 13th Part 5.
It made quite a bit less, actually, as I understand.
So
it was because people felt so burned by Part 5.
Exactly.
We don't have Jason and all that other stuff. And
it's the movie after.
I like 6 a lot. 6, I think, was the first one I saw. And so when I found out that movie wasn't a hit much later, I was like, really? It's
stunned.
Like one of my favorite ones.
And I think most people would go back and say, like, yeah, Part 6, if it's not their favorite, it's in their top 3. You know? But I think at the time, like, people like, I'm not going to get burned again. It's going to be, you know, the movie after it is what, you know, it's partly like with Star Wars right now. Like, you know, it's tough to say that a movie that just made $1 billion is a quote unquote flop, but like the Rise of Skywalker, probably not doing quite as well as expected overall. But I think that's because people are just burned out on, like, you've had how many Star Wars movies in a few years, so it no longer feels like an event anymore. So people just kind of like, third Lost Boy movie, you're like, that's cool.
You know what's unfortunate, and I mean, I don't know how much of this I can say, but I mean, I don't think he minds. A friend of mine wrote the script for the fourth movie, The Lost Boys, and he sent it to me, I think 2016. I just remembered I had it today, and I re-downloaded it. But it is such a good continuation of The Thirst. And the script for the fourth one, which was going to be called Lost Boys Forever, which is a really stupid title, but I mean, it brought back even the parent that were kind of sleeping in the corner of the first movie in the comic book store. Like, there were so many like references, not in a silly Deadpool way, but references that actually made sense in it. And I remember my buddy Robert that wrote it. I mean, he took it to Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman liked the script. Vincent Guastini, a really good special effects artist, really championed it, wanted to get made. But when it came time to like bring it to the studio and pitch the whole thing, like, they were just so done with the series because of how little The Thirst was watched. Like, it really killed the franchise, people not seeing it. And I mean, it's only recently, I mean, the talks of the TV show. And I don't even know if that's still a thing, but I mean,
that's what I wanted to talk about next. Absolutely. Yep. So just doing a quick little search here. Look, you know, as of July of last year, there's been talk of the Lost Boys pilot, but you actually have, and this is something like, I think for like over 10 years, like, it's always like Lost Boys is going to come back as a TV show. Like, originally, I think before it went to be direct to video movies, there was talk of actually doing a television show. But now you actually have a little bit of clout behind this show. Like, it's not a bunch of nobodies doing it. You have like Scandals. Heather Mitchell is going to be the showrunner of it. And it's creatively driven by Rob Thomas, who is behind Veronica Mars and iZombie. So Veronica Mars is
22.
you can go to hell, good sir. No, but what's funny is, like, actually in season 2 of iZombie, Rob Thomas, the singer, appears in the show at a big corporate gathering and he gets turned into a zombie. But the joke through the whole show is like the brilliance of Rob Thomas. Like he's a creative genius and just like the songbird of a generation. So because it's the namesake of it, I don't know. If you haven't watched iZombie, I highly recommend it. It's a brilliant 5 seasons of television overall. And by everyone's deafening silence, you're like, nope, we haven't watched that show. But Veronica Mars is one of my favorite.
I love Veronica Mars.
It's one of my favorite things of all time. So you have people like behind it. Allegedly, the pilot was going to be directed by Twilight's Catherine Hardwicke, which, but whatever. So we'll see if that actually becomes something at this point. But allegedly, like it's going to start filming this year.
Well, actually, I mean, did you read the article from I think Slash Film where it talked about how they passed on the pilot for The Lost Boys? So they fired every actor except 2 of them and are completely redoing the whole show.
Have not.
Like, I don't even know if that's the most recent thing or if they've went back on that too. But yeah, they don't even know what they're doing with the show at this point. Yeah. So I mean, unfortunately, I feel like the series is kind of dead in the water at this point.
The latest update is from July at this point, but if you get Rob Thomas involved, you have a guy who's had a couple successful shows involved, you have the woman behind Scandal involved in it, then I think that if it was dead, you would at least hear. Do you know what I mean? Like there'd be like, nope, this is no longer coming out at this point. So
as long as Rob and Santana say the final word, I'm there.
Right. But what's interesting is like, how do you do this show because I just think you have to make the vampires the focus of the show. At that point, I think that's a less interesting way to go overall. Like what I really like about these movies, the first movie, really like about the focus isn't really on David and his crew. Like they're the danger, but the focus is really on Sam and Michael overall, and them kind of navigate this really weird world overall.
Right, and we've already sort of had that with Buffy. You know what I mean? Like we've already had that as a series, so it's kind of hard to just reimagine it again.
I also think they might go the route, and this is the route that I would expect them to go, unfortunately, is the route of Bates Motel. Where Bates Motel, what it ended up becoming is a show less about Norman Bates' story and kind of like what's going on in that whole town. And I feel like because of things like the iconic line from the grandfather in the first movie, all the damn vampires, I'm sure there's plenty more to where almost it could be like an anthology-like show, but with, recurring characters almost.
So Castle Rock, but set in Santa Clara.
Yes. Right.
At that point. So, I mean, what's the overall, like, we're wrapping up this series at this point and we're moving onward. What is the legacy of the Lost Boys?
Any of you guys want to go on this one?
Okay, I'll go for it, Jared.
No, I was just saying, when you say the Lost Boys, I think the first thing that pops up is nostalgia. We have and I hate to use the word iconic because I really don't like the word much, but you do have a film that is that for so many people. The Lost Boys is one of, if not the most iconic vampire movie for people that grew up in the 80s. It was a completely perfect stew of ingredients. You had horror, you had comedy, you had gore, you had just great performances, great writing, great themes that a lot of us didn't pick up on the time, but as we got older, we really appreciated them. It was a movie that I think had things to say, but could also be experienced and loved at face value. And I think that it stands the test of time. I think The Lost Boys is just as great now as it ever was. And I think what the series ended up being is a series that tried so hard over the course of 2 sequels to recapture what we all loved in the first film, but ultimately failed. I mean, the third film's fun, but it's not Joel Schumacher's movie, you know, just like a lot of people could say that, Halloween Resurrection isn't John Carpenter's Halloween. So it's a natural evolution, I think, and it's an unfortunate one at times, but I do think The Lost Boys as a series should be embraced or at least experienced as a whole.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I want to hear. I would like to hear from the rest of the panel first, though.
Oh, me too.
Well, I'm struck by how influential it is over pretty much everything that came afterwards. I've been, since you asked that question on the first episode, and I sort of fumbled through my answer, I've been thinking about, how has this movie, especially the first one, let's face it, only the first one, has influenced other vampire films. And you clearly see the influence in, well, like I said before, From Dusk Till Dawn, but also if you think like Blade and Underworld, you have sort of this sort of modernity to the vampire that, was fairly new. What's interesting, the same year as The Lost Boys, we had Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark, which I think is a pretty amazing movie in its own right. But that one didn't hit the same way this one did. It didn't strike the chord at the time the way this one did. And I don't know exactly why that was, but this one has, its tendrils just reach out to everything that came afterwards in a pretty amazing way. And it's a great movie, and I like it more now than I did as when I was younger, frankly. I think there's just more to it. I just saw it back in the day as just sort of, oh, it's a vampire movie. Whereas now I see it as something that's a lot more than that, and it's a really fascinating movie too, as well as being very fun.
Yeah, Brian, I agree with you in that I appreciate it now more than I did back then, because I just shunned it in the 80s and 90s. It was not for me, and I didn't want to watch it. Like, I'll watch, Labyrinth on repeat, but I'm not going to watch The Lost Boys. And I think rewatching it now and just, I guess, seeing it for what it was in the 80s and how much bigger it could have been to audiences that were not me. It's a really important movie for, people coming of age at that time in their lives. And I think that it's a much bigger movie than just a silly, fun vampire movie, which of course it totally is. But then you look at the sequels and I mean, they're all right. They're, the second one was not, we can just skip that. And this last one, The Thirst is okay. I mean, it's a fun ride. It's fun to watch the Frog Brothers come together again. I think if I were a bigger fan of the movie in the 80s, I think watching them together in 2010, if I had been the audience for it in 2010, it really would have, it brought joy to my life. And even now, just thinking about it and thinking about how much I actually did enjoy this movie and how much I laughed at Corey Feldman's clips and just some of the one-liners, it was really enjoyable. And I think The Lost Boys is bigger than I gave it credit for.
Yeah, and I would say this is like a one and done series for me overall. Like, the Tribe is unwatchable. The Thirst is a lot of fun. Actually, The Thirst is probably something I would, if I had a choice, put on over a couple other movies that we've covered so far in the 40 or so that we've covered. Like, it's a lot of fun overall. But I would, I think you cannot overstate the importance of the first movie in terms of, like, really how it influenced vampire pop culture down the road. Like, it really showed. It was one of the first movies I would say that MTV really kind of like drove the bus on and made like a really kind of really helped make that movie a hit. But then like down the road you have these like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Twilight, that the look and feel of this movie, especially with Buffy the television series, is all over The Lost Boys. And it's so much fun. And the performances are great across the board with it. And it's one of those movies that's not a kiddie movie. You can go back and watch that now and have a lot of fun with it. And it's not a movie that's made for little kids overall. So I really, really love it overall. And I'm glad we actually covered it here. But I think it is time to put The Lost Boys to bed.
Well, before
Veronica,
that, though, we got to remember something really important that The Lost Boys gave us. And that is a YouTube video of Corey Feldman singing.
You're welcome.
Cry Little Sister in leather pants with no shirt on. And
could someone please send me that link?
I think I did actually.
Yeah, you did.
Oh my god!
I was just watching that before we started recording, and boy, I kind of want to get that Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind procedure done now.
Right.
But
bless his heart, he is trying.
Yeah,
bless his heart.
Yeah.
Really quickly, oh, sorry. No, I was going to say, unrelated, but really quickly, I want to get this in. There's a trailer that dropped today, and it is for a movie that I cannot vouch for enough. To any listeners, please make this movie be on your radar. It's called Guns Akimbo.
Oh, I've heard of it.
Search that movie out, watch that trailer, and be ready for one of the best fucking action movies of all time.
And that's Daniel Radcliffe and Samara Weaving, right?
I watched it last night. I watched it last night for work because I'm reviewing it for Dread Central. Please make sure to watch that movie February 28th when it comes out. Like,
comes out on my birthday.
Oh, dude, this movie, it just blew me away how great it is. It is everything that people that grew up with Commando, Rambo, Van Damme. It's directed by the director of Deathgasm. So you kind of know what you're know what you're getting with this movie.
Yep.
Daniel Radcliffe with guns bolted to his hands. It is such a fun movie. Look it up.
Question for the panel. More interesting post-franchise career, Pattinson or Radcliffe?
Pattinson.
Oh,
see, I love The Lighthouse. I love Good Time. You know, I think
The Lost City of Zed. Like, he is a fantastic actor.
He really is. But I also feel like at the same time, I feel like he's playing it safe now that he got out of Twilight. Like, you know, I'm just going to do these more like artsy movies. And I'm fine with them. I love them. The Lighthouse is one of my favorite movies last year. But Radcliffe, he is all over the board. I mean, Horns, Imperium, you know.
Swiss Army Man.
Swiss Army Man.
Will make you look at this guy in a completely different light. He's every online troll, you know, that responds to every single troll, and you want to slap him upside the face 5 minutes into the movie.
That's actually kind of true, because if you take, like, especially if you look at the two Coreys and you look at Daniel Radcliffe, he could have gone in a totally different direction with his being a child actor, and he's done so well for himself. You know what, you're right. It's a toss up between the two.
I mean, I am definitely a huge fan of both of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at Radcliffe with Swiss Army Man playing a farting corpse, basically. Jungle, Horns. You know, he's doing some incredibly fun and incredibly engaging work. And Radcliffe, I really love the work that Radcliffe is doing overall. And it's interesting, you know, Veronica, you just said, like, these guys could have gone in a completely different direction, you know, overall. And I think it speaks a little bit about the age we're in at this point.
Yeah.
When you look at the 80s, everything was so excessive. Like, I am a pro wrestling fan, and my fandom comes and goes. Sometimes it's ridiculously charged, and right now, like, I can't be bothered to watch it. But I know, like, in the 80s and 90s, like, your pro wrestlers were basically, like, steroided up monsters that were snorting as much cocaine as you could humanly snort. Like, when Hulk Hogan was saying, like, you know, eat your vitamins, he was talking about cocaine, basically. Like, vitamins were cocaine. And now, like, you hear, like, what do pro wrestlers do now? It's like, well, we go back to our hotel and play on our PlayStations, like, and have a protein shake. It's like such a different age. Like, you have all these horror stories from the 80s, and I mean, look at poor oh God, Home Alone, dude. I can't now. I hate.
Macaulay Culkin.
I mean, look, you know, you look at all these horror stories of, like, these kids that had everything and now they're, like, fucked. And it's like,
he's all right though.
Yeah,
he is now, I would say, but his Twitter game is 100% on point.
So good. I love when he trashes Devon Sawa. Like, I just love the rivalry. He's fun to watch. Yeah. And those are the boys of my childhood. I didn't have the Coreys, but I had, like, you know, the 5 years later, the Macaulays and the Devons. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's funny when really quickly. It's funny when we're talking about Radcliffe and Pattinson because I mean Daniel Radcliffe was Harry Potter. Pattinson was obviously Edward from Twilight, and within the last few years, we have Harry Potter as a farting corpse, and we have Pattinson talking about fucking a steak.
Fucking a steak.
The world that we live in, and I am here for it.
And now he's Batman.
And now he's Batman.
Yeah, now he's Batman.
And I'm stoked for it. I think he's going to be brilliant in it. Like,
Me too.
Wolverine.
What's that?
I said, now give me Radcliffe as Wolverine.
Oh, man.
Oh, that would be fun.
Do it, you cowards. Absolutely. Do it. All right. So we're going to put the Lost Boys to bed. Veronica, what are we covering next?
Oh, well, it seems like Poltergeist won, didn't it?
It did.
It won the
I
poll.
hope so. So I just ordered a bunch of Blu-rays. So
Guys, we're in for a treat. I mean, we all know Poltergeist, but I'm just really excited to chat about it because this Poltergeist was my foray into horror. It terrified me as a kid. I still have nightmares from Poltergeist, so I'm really excited to cover this.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say on a whim, I bought the trilogy just a couple months ago, which was very strange to find out that that's what we're going to be covering next. I hadn't watched those movies in 30 years because they scared me so bad as a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about 2 and 3 in particular. 1 I had seen a few times, but 2 and 3. I when I rewatched those, I was like, oh, I remember that. Oh
man,
there are visceral
it
scenes in
deep.
all 3 of those movies where they just haunt you. Like there's just specific moments, and for me, this is the big franchise.
I just picked up Scream Factory did really nice special editions for part 2 and part 3.
Yeah.
So I just had those delivered today. I did not buy the first one on Blu-ray because it wasn't a special edition. No real bonus features to it. It was $5 on Vudu in high def, so I just went the streaming route for it. And I'm surprised that there's not a special edition for Poltergeist, which is routinely
time.
At this point, though, I mean.
Right. I mean, especially with all the controversy behind. I mean, we'll get into it next week, of course. But Toby Hooper and Steven. But yeah, so I feel like there should have been. I wonder if because of the controversy there is not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think that's it. I don't. Yeah. I don't think that's it. I just think MGM.
Speaking on that really quick, if any of you listeners read Scream Magazine, the latest issue. I have an interview with Oliver Robbins from Poltergeist talking about his experience making the movies. So
excellent.
Check that out.
So we'll dig into that next week.
So excited.
Definitely dig into that. So, and again, it's another franchise. There are 4 movies in this series overall, but are the second and third? I guess the second one did moderately well overall, but it's really known for the first movie overall. And I think it's a lesser Spielberg movie.
I think it's a really good Toby movie, motherfucker. No, I'm just kidding.
Spoiler alert. I think it's lesser Spielberg. Yeah, I watched it last night for the first time in 30-something years, and I'm like,
wow.
But we'll see. It's no Mandy, I guess. So.
Right. What could
all
be?
right. All right, everyone. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, we hope you enjoyed our coverage, sort of coverage on Lost Boys: The Thirst. We snuck in a few words here or there on it, I think, in this hour and change. But you can find. Yes, rest in peace, Corey Haim. Rest in peace, Johnny Trash.
Rest in peace, DJ X.
But you find us over at Pod and Pendulum overall. I tend to be the wise ass that gets in trouble. I guess I got people who like the Joker got angry this week.
People who like the Joker like to get angry. That's their hobby.
Yeah, I know.
I haven't seen the Joker. That seems to be the theme from Brian over here. Is I haven't seen that movie, so I am. But hey, going back to our first episode that we did together with Veronica, I bought Sinister, so I'm going to watch Sinister. So I'll be caught up there.
Buy
Very
Sinister
exciting.
as well.
Yeah.
I will.
Hey, I love the hell out of the second movie.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Excellent. All right, everyone. Have a great week. Another show is in the bag, and we'll talk to you guys all next week.
All right.
All right.